One of the most common questions that we get from our customers is how to make the aircraft fly more realistically. And obviously there's going to be some disconnect between the simulator and flying a real aircraft, but there are some things that you can do to improve your overall experience. Specifically, that involves setting your control response curves within the simulator. This is most important for the yoke and the rudder pedals. We're going to go through in this video how to set it for your yoke, but the process is the same for all of your controls. Now, the easiest place to do this is actually when you're in a flight so that you can get instant feedback and fine-tune it to your exact liking. So if you go up to the top right within XPlane, you see the little settings icon, and that pulls up your settings. Okay, if you select the yoke and go to Edit Response Curve, by default it shows a curve like this. Now, if you move your yoke, you'll actually see how it moves, and it's you can see there's really no response curve to that. It's just got this very gradual progression. Same thing with the roll. Now if you roll it left and right, it does that. Now I found that the easiest way to set this is actually changing this to linear, and if you click the little plus down here, what this does is this actually gives you points that you can edit. So if you do this, if you change the roll, that means that it's super sensitive. So if 100 is the maximum amount of deflection, this is getting to basically 70% with only 10% motion. Okay, so that's super sensitive at the end point. Conversely, if you do it like this, that means you have to move the yoke all the way before it starts to actually move. So this does take a little bit of fine-tuning, but as a general rule, what we found works the best is if you make it a little bit more sensitive towards the midpoint. You want to have two areas of adjustment. So if you make it a little bit more sensitive towards the midpoint, so at about 10%, or the interp mode, you want your, let's see, about 10. You want this to be about 18. So the first column here around 10%, and the second column here about 18. And then for the second one, you want this to flatten out a little bit so that at about 50% it's 0.34. And again, these are just some from our flight testing. If you feel that it's a little bit too sensitive at the midpoint, what the first thing to try to do is to actually spread this curve out to flatten it out rather than bringing it down. So if you feel like it's too sensitive right at the midpoint, first try to just move it directly to the right. Likewise, if you feel it's not sensitive enough, just move it directly to the left, and you're trying to make this more steep. If you move it up and down too much, that also affects the secondary slope. Okay, so again, this is just where it takes some fine-tuning. So if we go that to about 0.1 and 0.18, we'll apply that. And then for the pitch, same thing, we're going to change this to linear. We're going to add two areas of adjustment. And for the first one, we do about 0.8. I'm sorry, 0.08 and 0.15. And for this one, we'll do about 0.5 and 0.35. So again, you can see that as you're doing that. Now also, sometimes the yoke does not go all the way to max, and that's just from the calibration, and that doesn't matter. What you do to fix that is just add another one. You push the yoke all the way in, and then you can just bring that up. And so basically you'll see what happens here is, yeah, the first one should always be 0, 0, by the way. So you'll see that this is more sensitive right at the middle, so it takes not as much motion, and then it kind of makes it a little bit less sensitive, and then it's not until you really start to get pulling it back far that it gets more sensitive again. And we can do the same thing for our roll here, so add one more. And just kind of bring that over there. Perfect. And then once those are done, you can fly. And if you feel like, okay, well my pitch and roll feel maybe just still a little bit too sensitive at the midpoint. Again, it's all your feel. These are just starting points. And again, if you feel that it's just a little bit too sensitive, take this and just drag it directly to the right. Drag it to the right. Same thing. And that feels much better. So it does take some fine tuning, and it also has to do with your personal preference. But by adjusting these control sensitivities, you will have a much better experience flying the aircraft.